Pittsburgh Postgame Pirates edition for this Wednesday, September the 9th. I'm Matt Gajtka alongside Alan Saunders. On Roberto Clemente Day, the Pirates put up a bona fide dud, unfortunately. 8-1 losers to the first place Chicago White Sox. So no shame in the decision, but I think they would have loved to have had a little bit of a better showing, or a lot better showing, on the day when 21 is dyed in the right field grass out there at PNC Park. The only run they scored was on a catcher's interference. So, yes, it was about as lackluster as it gets, in the Pirates as a team, as a lineup, mustered just 4 hits against Dane Dunning, a depth starter for the White Sox, and Chicago a couple of Chicago relievers. But we're not really here to talk about the game necessarily, thank goodness, although we will have our customary 3 up and 3 down by the end of the show. We do want to talk about number 21, the great one, Roberto Clemente, in addition to as well what Chicago's doing, because I find the White Sox rather fascinating. After several down years, they look to be right there in terms of realistic World Series contenders, and definitely AL Central contenders, as they're tied, or they were tied with the Tribe coming into this one. But, Alan, of course, we want to talk about Clemente and talk about what he means, and that game definitely gave us the excuse to lead off with that.
Yeah, and I think, certainly we were going to talk about Roberto Clemente and his legacy, and the best way to honor it, I think, is certainly a topic that Pirates fans care about, as well as just people in general. I think this is something that goes pretty far beyond the Pirates. I saw a lot of teams in Major League Baseball tweeting about Clemente Day today, and wearing 21 uniforms by a number of players across the majors. And I think that's an interesting topic for a couple of reasons. I think one of the things that it really brings up is that one of the things we've always done in sports to sort of signify a player's greatness in their place in history is retire uniforms, but I'm not sure that's always the best way to go about it. And I think Major League Baseball is kind of getting it right here with the way they've honored Jackie Robinson and what they're maybe doing, or maybe have some ideas to do with Roberto Clemente. I think it's very interesting. And so, yeah, we were going to talk about that anyway, but man, not the greatest of ball games at the old ball yard tonight. When you score the 1 run on catcher's interference, you almost have to wonder if they felt bad for you. That's not even a legitimate run, right? I mean, that's another pretty putrid offensive performance from a team that's been full of them. And man, fitting that they load the bases there in the 8th inning, and it's Josh Bell on a well-struck ball straight at the center fielder. Isn't that just sort of the way that this season has gone for the Pirates in a nutshell?
Certainly, and also Gregory Polanco coming up and not able to drive in runs too during that situation. In the 8th, it all does add up, even though in the middle third of the season, if you want to call it that, I know the Pirates have actually intentionally separated the season into 20-game segments here in this 60-game schedule. We'll see if they play all 60, but they've been right around 500 for the past 20 games or so. So they have been playing better, and of course they had the back-to-back walk-off wins. Sunday against the Reds, off day Monday. That's been, well, any day the Pirates don't lose this summer is a good day for them. And then, of course, last night they walk off too, maybe not in spectacular fashion, little fielder's choice grounder, but they got the job done and got some excitement, but not so much in this series finale. Just a quick 2-gamer against the Pale Hose at PNC Park. But let's talk Clemente, Alan, and I think nationally is where we're starting to see some movement here on the Clemente legacy, because his legacy has always been outsized here in Pittsburgh, literally in the case of a couple of, well, one statue and one mural there on the north side. If you travel on the Parkway North, you see that beautiful mural by the artist by the last name of Keimer, I believe it is, on the side of one of the restaurants there right along the top of the one of the off ramps there as you head up the north to the Parkway North. Anyway, I butchered that description. You know where it is if you've seen it. But in Pittsburgh, the Clemente Museum has been here for many years too. But I'm not sure that number 21 has gotten his just due nationwide until recently. We're seeing some movement here. We saw some players and coaches around Major League Baseball wear 21 today. If they had some heritage of Puerto Rican descent, they were allowed to do that. So more of a league-wide celebration here, not just a Pirate celebration, but also with the Pirates being allowed to wear all 21s on their backs today, too. Studio 21 is there at the MLB Network Studios in Secaucus, New Jersey. So do you feel like I do that we're seeing more appreciation for not just the player that Clemente was, but maybe very appropriately in this, I think, social justice-minded time, what Clemente did off the field, too?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the legacy, right? That to me is very important, is that you have the Roberto Clemente Award that's been given out for years in Major League Baseball for, off the field contributions and things of that nature. And I really think there's a great opportunity here in baseball that the Pirates could lead, but obviously it would have to be a part of a greater part of baseball than just them, to really do something special with the number 21 and with Clemente's legacy. I think, Greg Brown was talking about on the broadcast today, some kind of idea where the Clemente Award nominee from each team could wear 21 that year. That would be impressive to me, to have that, or to have, to maybe you take a guy from each team and you just say, the guy with the top charitable contribution every year, gets a 21 patch for his uniform. I just think there's a lot of ways you could go to make that number become. Listen, Roberto Clemente was a fantastic baseball player. And I don't want to not talk about him being a fantastic baseball player, because he was, and the other things that he did were important because he was a baseball player. Let's not lose sight of that. But Roberto Clemente's legacy is being a groundbreaking Latino baseball player and being a groundbreaking humanitarian baseball player, right? That's what makes Roberto Clemente special. He was a really good baseball player. He was not the best baseball player in the league for many of the years that he played. I'm not sure he's the best Pirates baseball player in history if we're just talking about the baseball. He's noteworthy for going beyond baseball and impacting large segments of society that were not just him, doing so selflessly, doing so in a manner that spread his wealth beyond him and his family. And I think if you can find a way, it doesn't have to be purely tied to Latin players. It doesn't have to be purely tied to humanitarian concerns, but some way to celebrate that and to make that a bigger, to make that synonymous with that 21, right? When you see, a number that's out of circulation, that absence has meaning, but it also comes with absence, right? It also means that you don't see it. You don't see, a player that maybe fans have forgotten about, or that have just the time has gone on that they don't remember a player like maybe a Ralph Kiner or something like that, right? We are still in the era where people in this community grew up watching Roberto Clemente play, but that won't happen forever. And so I think there's a real opportunity to make that 21 synonymous with not just a great right fielder, but a groundbreaking person for the efforts of Latinos in this country and an outstanding humanitarian. If you could make that number synonymous with those efforts through its presence instead of its absence, I think that would be unbelievably unique and a fitting tribute to Roberto Clemente.
I think it's a great point. You talk about aging out and the people who did see Clemente play. I have so many of my Clemente impressions secondhand. Well, I have all of them secondhand because I was born in '85. I'm 35 years old, so I'm working my way toward middle age, but Clemente's final game still predates me by more than a decade. So yeah, that does illustrate the challenge here, and it does illustrate the importance of finding some way to commemorate and to make this a long-lasting tribute. And I think they're on a good path, both the Pirates and Major League Baseball. And I'll get to this in 3 Up and 3 Down, but I'm impressed by Derek Shelton, his embrace of this unique aspect of Pirates history, considering it's his first year in the organization. He didn't come up with the Pirates. Now, he heard about Clemente, and I'm sure he learned more about it as he's been a major league coach over the years. But this is a different situation for him, and it feels like he really grasped that. And so that encourages me. It makes me feel like that people are out there reading about him and learning about him. And that's anybody who's under really 50 has no memory of Clemente playing, honestly, if you look at it that way. And that's kind of a scary thought. So I think that urgency could also boost some of the initiatives, some of the proposals that we heard from Greg Brown tonight, like you talked about, and some of the things that you said too. But you did mention the part about him being a heck of a baseball player. And I took the occasion during the game tonight, during some of those sleepy late innings, to look at Clemente's baseball reference page. And first of all, you see all the stars on the left side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-time All-Star, also a 12-time Gold Glover, the MVP of the National League in 1966, led the league in hits twice, led Major League Baseball in triples once, led the league in batting average 4 times. And by traditional standards, Alan, you look at that on-base percentage, a 359. He's more of an old-timey player in that he wanted to put the bat on the ball, and also maybe more of a stereotypically Latin American player in that he wasn't going to, quote, walk his way off the island or whichever island he was coming to America from. He wanted to hit his way to Major League Baseball, and he certainly did with a 317 lifetime average and a slugging percentage that frequently topped 500, even in an era when he's swinging what might as well have been a tree log, considering how light some of the bats are today and how different it is to hit today. It was more of a level swing type of era, and Clemente was that player uniquely, I think, positioned with his talents and his skill set, his arm, his speed, really a scout's dream, right? And I wonder what type of player he would have been if he were born maybe 20 or 30 years later. I wonder how he would have developed, but he is the type of player that I think established the thought, the prototype of the 5-tool guy. What are your impressions of him just from learning about him as a baseball player?
You know, I think one of the things that always sort of stood out to me about the highlights that you see, or the players that I've talked to that knew or play with him, and it's just the there aren't that many players I think in baseball that are truly multi-dimensional, and that it is rare when you have a player that is an absurdly good hitter that just is also an absurdly good fielder. And I think that multi-dimensional part of Clemente's game is always something that I've gravitated towards. Obviously you don't get to 3,000 hits without being a very accomplished hitter. His swing, beautiful. But what I really want to watch is him throw bombs from right field and just do unbelievable stuff in the outfield. I think that just makes him, and you're talking about the 5 tools. I think that's it, right? That's the thing that made him special as a player to me, is not just that he was good at one thing, it's that he was good at everything. And I think that was rare then. I think it's rare now. I think that's always rare. We it is very hard to find baseball players that are outstanding offensively, defensively, base running like that. That's not easy. And I think to me, that's the part of his game that always stood out to me, is that there was nothing that man was bad at that had anything to do with baseball. And from what I've gathered from the rest of his life, I'm not sure there was much he was bad at in general. He was just a very talented guy who also, and then you couple that with the personality, I think it made him a very special person and worthy of the lionization that he's received in this town and is starting to receive nationally since his death.
There is that mysticism, right? There's the thought that we never saw him grow old. He passed away at 38 on a humanitarian trip to Central America, died at sea, never even saw him in a coffin, right? So it's almost like he was taken away up into the heavens and basically ascended there. So there's a certain saintly quality to Roberto Clemente, but I also encourage folks to go out there and check out a Myron Cope feature from Sports Illustrated of Roberto Clemente, which gets into the complicated nature of his personality. I'm not sure he was as beloved in Pittsburgh or maybe some other places during his playing career as he has been afterwards. So There was some thought that he was a hypochondriac. It's a rather amusing feature as well. And, there's obviously some racism involved during that time. And we haven't eradicated racism, not even close today. So imagine what it was like to be a quote, black Latino player in that era. So he was groundbreaking in that way too, as a true superstar from Latin America. So you have that, and you also have the fact that he retired on exactly 3,000 hits. It's just the story was a fairy tale, also a tragedy at the end, and so there were so many aspects to it that just add to the drama of the Clemente legacy. And well, I'm just glad that we get a chance to talk about it and that it's still brought up. And I think we all would do well to continue to bring it up. And I've never been to the Clemente Museum. Have you, Alan? Because I'd love to make a trip out there.
No, I've not, and that is definitely one of the things that I really need to do. And obviously, right now with the situation with the pandemic, I don't even know if it's open. I think most museums and things of that nature are on limited schedules, if at all. But I think that's one of those things that I'm just been waiting for the right opportunity. You need someone to come in from out of town that loves baseball, right? And that's when you got to take them there. It seems like a thing to do. But I've been to Cooperstown, and obviously Clemente is pretty prominently featured there in some of the different exhibits. And I thought that was a pretty special thing to put him in his historical context. I think one of the things that maybe we lose sight of in Pittsburgh here, and like you said, he was a unique player at a unique time, and there was that racially tinged perception of him when he played. And I think when you see Roberto Clemente sort of in the pantheon of Pirates greats, and you can line him up with Dave Parker and Willie Stargell and Doc Ellis and Manny Sanguillen, and he doesn't seem that out of place to us, I think. But when you think about young baseball players in the early 1960s in the United States, it really puts that into pretty significant perspective, how alone on an island he really was.
Well, obviously, more on Clemente you can find out there on the internet if you want to look it up. If there's some great books, David Marinis's biography of Clemente was a prominent fixture on my childhood coffee table back home in Weirton, West Virginia. So there are so many avenues to find out more about him and find out more about what he was all about. And I would challenge everyone out there to make him more than that saintly figure up there looking down on us from heaven. Make him more of a human, so then you can understand how you can be inspired to do things like that. I think a lot of times it's very tempting to say, well, that person's above me or above us, and he or she is just better than me, and I'm never going to be able to match that. That's not what Roberto would have wanted. He would have wanted to inspire people, and he did want to inspire people with his works here on Earth. So that's that as far as the non-baseball or the non-game-related portion of Pittsburgh Postgame is concerned. I'm Matt Gajtka, again with Alan Saunders. Thank you for watching live if you are. I know most of you watch after the fact, but we do try to be as live as possible immediately following these games. Steelers coverage coming up this weekend. Riverhounds coverage continues on Saturday. College football begins. Pitt and West Virginia are going to be in action, so keep it right here for all your Pittsburgh postgame needs. Alan, let's talk about the White Sox here, the opponent tonight, because I think there are some parallels and maybe some differences between what the White Sox have pulled off and getting back into contention after some fallow years and what the Pirates are trying to do. Now, the Pirates are at least a couple of years behind. I think they'd be happy if they were just 1 or 2 years behind where the White Sox are right now. You look at that lineup, it's very impressive, and the pitching's pretty good too, but that lineup really powers things for Chicago. How realistic is it for the Pirates to once again mount that rebuild? Because you look at the White Sox, and for me, it's a pretty intriguing combination of trades. They took advantage of moving guys like Chris Sale. Sale, of course, off to the Red Sox. He produced Yoan Moncada, the Cuban native. It was Jose Quintana who went to the Cubs and got them Eloy Jimenez along with yesterday's starting pitcher Cease. There's a couple of first rounders mixed in, including the defending AL batting champ, Tim Anderson. He's an impressive guy to watch too. Some signees from Cuba, Jose Abreu a few years back Luis Robert, pardon me, in more recent vintage. Then you mix in some free agents: Yasmani Grandal, James McCann, who hit 2 dingers tonight, Dallas Keuchel, who we all thought maybe was washed up and done, and then of course Lucas Giolito, the top prospect that they plucked from the Nationals in the Adam Eaton trade as well. So 100 losses 2 years ago, Alan, and they're looking as good as anybody in the AL right now. So I realize that the Pirates probably can't duplicate some of those free agent signings, the international signings, or maybe they just choose not to, depending on your opinion of their financial situation. But how much of a role model team can the White Sox be for the Bucks?
I don't think they can be at all. And I think the reason for that is, and you touched on it, they started their rebuild. They rebuilt, right? They started building while they still had things worth having. They traded Chris Sale and Adam Eaton for 4 top 40 prospects in all of baseball, including the number 1 overall prospect in all of baseball. The Pirates could not get 4 prospects for 2 guys on their roster, period. Any of them. So they don't have, I think one of the things that's very interesting is that Ben Cherington has very purposefully said this, we don't consider this a rebuild. And he's right, because rebuilding implies that you're tearing down to rebuild, right? You're building again. They're starting from nothing. They're just building. They're not rebuilding. There is no building there now. There's nothing worth having. They have to start all the way over again. So I don't think the White Sox are a very good potential fit. What they did can't work for the Pirates. I just don't see it. They don't have the ability to get those top prospects through trades. They're going to have, this is going to be a long and slow grind, several years of really poor results, stockpiling high draft picks in multiple classes before they can come out of this, unless the players on the roster suddenly look like different guys than they've been at least this season.
When you look at it that way, it is rather depressing that the Pirates basically blew it when they traded McCutchen and Cole. Yeah, they got Kyle Crick, a pretty useful bullpen arm. Colin Moran is probably a decent major league hitter, but playing first base, the standard for production is pretty darn high now, as opposed to playing third base even. Jason Martin, Michael Feliz, you look at it. Brian Reynolds, hopefully he can regain his form. But like you said, this year's been a pretty much of a downer and a waste for a lot of these guys. Maybe not a waste, I shouldn't say that, but certainly a setback, and you hope they learn from it. But some of the players they picked up have either been injured or have been non-productive, and there are no big trade pieces left. Josh Bell, maybe if they traded him a year ago, could have gotten them a pretty decent haul. But at this point, I think he's worth more to the Pirates than he is in any kind of a trade exchange. So they're in a difficult spot. And you make a great point about Cherington too, because I've wondered how many times is he going to parrot this line that it's not a rebuild, it's a build, or it's not a rebuild at all. Well, it makes perfect sense if you look at it literally, just because where he has taken over, he's not tasked with the first part of building that usually the new GM gets, which is, okay, we're going to take this thing apart. They are starting from scratch in a lot of ways, and it's going to be heavily dependent on development and drafting. I mentioned there are a couple of White Sox contributors right now who were drafted by them, but not many, really. You look at the White Sox for the most part, and it's international signings, a sprinkling of free agent signings, and I mentioned those 3 big trades, brought in guys like Giolito and Yohan Moncada and the like. So that there are a few players on this roster that they plugged in that struggled, actually. The last couple of years, Giolito allowed the most earned runs in the major leagues 2 years ago, but they've had the patience too with their players and with their manager as well, Rick Renteria. He's been at the helm of that ship through the bad times, at least the tail end of the bad times, and now through the good times. So they are reaping those rewards. At least for me, I like those stories, and even if there's not maybe necessarily a direct translation to what the Pirates are trying to do.
Yeah, I think there are other models out there that seem to me like they're better fits for what the Pirates are trying to do. I look at the Minnesota Twins, right? I mean, they're not excuse me, they're not at the top of this division, but they're pretty close at the, I believe they're in a playoff spot in the American League or right at the cusp of one if they're not. And they had top 5 draft picks in 8 years. Like, to me, that's what it's going to take for the Pirates to get to that level, is that they're going to have to be really bad for a long time and collect these prospects. And now you don't have to wait until they all mature, right? You can draft an 18-year-old that's really good and then trade him for a 24-year-old that fits more with your core. At some point you can collapse them together, but the only way for the Pirates to get players that good is to draft them or trade players that they've drafted for them, and they need a lot of them. So it could be a while, but I think that's got to be the model. And you look at the standings, and it's been a fun couple days for some walk-off winners, but the Pirates have in those wins lost their grip on that last place spot. And I gotta tell you, I think that is the most important thing that could happen to this team the rest of the year. They have to come in last place. They cannot not come in last place.
Yeah, even if Rob Manfred and the powers that be at Major League Baseball tinker with the draft order formula for next year, just on the justification that this year is so strange, and I wouldn't mind that necessarily as an impartial observer, but the Pirates do need to give themselves the best chance that they can to pick first and really be right there for a couple of years running. So here they are now at 14-27, back in the business of losing. 27 losses, actually just tied for fourth in Major League Baseball right now. Arizona, Kansas City, who they'll face this weekend, and Boston all have more than them. So there's some work to do and some games to make up yet. Remember, they have to make up a couple of games against the Cardinals coming up as well. So maybe you put those in the L column. It's such a bizarro season in that way. All right, let's transition on to 3 up and 3 down. And Alan, I touched upon this earlier as one of my ups. I'm really impressed by Derek Shelton in terms of his demeanor, and like I said, grasping the heritage of this organization. And he's got a freebie year in my mind. I haven't gotten on him too much, actually, at all, for some late game decisions, for some things that occurred earlier in the year. I think he is a smart guy, and I think in a lot of ways he's doing the bidding of Ben Cherington, playing some guys like maybe a JT Riddle before the trade deadline, who I'm wondering, why is he getting playing time, dangling him for a potential move, who knows what. But right now he can move with some freedom. But for me, I think he's kind of in some ways the best of Clint Hurdle's personality, where he's kind of a big personality, a little not bombastic, but certainly outspoken, certainly the type of guy that can wave the flag for your organization at the front end of it, without some of that defensiveness. Now, I didn't cover Hurdle in his early years in Pittsburgh. Maybe some of that defensiveness came in later. Some of that prickliness came in later, but I'm not sure I see it in Shelton. Now, time will tell if he's as good as Hurdle was at rallying guys and getting them on the same page, and also adapting and maybe dealing with some difficult personalities as you add some veterans down the line. But just the whole embracing the Clemente Day thing, it reiterated to me that I think the Derek Shelton hire is a good hire. At least that's my assessment through 40-some games of his tenure.
I have not had extensive interactions with him, and I don't really enjoy giving judgments on people that I've not, because I think you gain a lot from those. I think Clint Hurdle was one of those people, actually. I think people that talked to him on a person-to-person basis in this town had a very different perception of him than people that did not. I've been impressed with Derek Shelton's handling of people and his sort of abilities as, for lack of a better term, a human, to be a leader, to facilitate a positive message and environment. I think those are very difficult things, and I think they're important. I've not been particularly impressed with his tactical managerial skills. I think that's somewhat to be expected for a first-year manager, but it also is not something that, if the Pirates ever hope to be good again, they can't have that kind of hindrance on themselves either. Even when the Pirates were really good in the middle of the last decade, they still needed all the help they could get. They were never the most talented team out there. And so they're not a team that can afford to have their manager losing them games. And again, we just talked about how they probably shouldn't be trying to win these games. So I don't know. Maybe Derek Shelton's just playing the fool out there. I don't know. But I've not been particularly inspired by the way he's used the bullpen and the lineups different every day. Not that I care about that, but it just seems like there's been no common thread or spark or thought behind a lot of the things that he's done. It just seems like it's been a lot of random throwing things against the wall.
I think that's a product of where they are as an organization. So I'm willing to forgive him in that way, or maybe even commend him for taking away some of those win probability points along the way. Like Davidas Neverauskas pitching last night, Tuesday night, made no sense in a 0-0 game. So I'm of the belief that the Pirates are just showcasing him and maybe acting like, hey, this guy's all right. We're still throwing him out there. One of my downs, JT Brubaker. We talked about him, in fact, deja vu. Alan, we were discussing him the last time we were together here for a Pirates postgame.
Our starts
retired the first 6 tonight, but that Sox lineup is formidable. I'm not exactly going to kill him for getting run over there. James McCann, though, basically the backup catcher taking you deep twice. That's going to sting regardless of how deep of a lineup it is. But overall, Brubaker a setback here, and young pitcher. I didn't expect him to blaze through the rest of his starts with increasing aptitude, but this is one of those that you're gonna have to chalk up to an experience that you try to build on.
I'll go with a plus, and I like Nick Tropiano in relief. I think he's the guy that kind of came out of nowhere. Was a relatively high draft pick. Has some talent. I think that's when you're looking for bullpen guys, you don't need a well-rounded, fully formed, perfect thing. You need like one or two things you can grasp onto and say, okay, he's got that. I can work with that. He's got, and so I just think he's shown enough to be an interesting guy as a part of that bullpen going forward. I'm not saying he's going to be perfect. If you look at the ERA and the FIP, there's a gulf between the two of them, so maybe not quite as good as the results suggest. But I like the splitter. I think that's not a thing that you see every day. So I just think there's something there that interests me and that I want to see more of in general. And then of course a pretty solid relief outing tonight.
I love that forkball, man. That is especially
is that what you call? Is that what he calls it? A forkball splitter? I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it, obviously, but it's kind of a throwback pitch, right? That was a popular relief pitcher's pitch 25 years ago. I don't know that many guys. I remember Solomon Torres used to throw one here in Pittsburgh, but that might be the last guy I remember throwing one on a regular basis for the Pirates. So definitely kind of a throwback thing, and it's just interesting to me.
Well, AT&T Sportsnet captured a couple on super slow-mo tonight that looked like knuckleballs the way they were tumbling through the air. They had some of that oscillation, and that's just the case of jamming that so far deep into your into the joint between your two fingers there, between your index and your middle finger, that you're taking almost all the spin off it. So a change-up forkball, almost a knuckle forkball kind of a look there for Nick Tropiano. So I'm glad you mentioned him because he was one of my ups as well. So I'll give you another up because we need an upper after that 8-1, pardon me, felt like 8-0 loss for the Pirates to the White Sox tonight. Ke'Bryan Hayes, more of a quiet evening for the offense overall. But I don't know if you caught this feature on MLB.com, but if he were qualified for MLB hitter leaderboards, he would be first in hard hit rate and exit velocity right now. He's averaging 97 miles per hour off the bat right now, and it's an extremely small sample size, almost comically small at this point. But Alan, also, that's what he was billed as, was a guy who hit the ball hard, if not necessarily up in the air that often. In fact, case in point, his hardest hit ball so far was a grounder up the middle against the Reds over the weekend that was right around 110 miles an hour. So if he ever adds some lift to that swing, boy, there's potential there. And I think that's what folks have been talking about in terms of his upside. But at the same time, even if he doesn't, there's always something to be said, speaking of Roberto Clemente, for a guy who just hits the ball hard, even if it is on the ground or a line drive most of the time.
There is, but that's not the trend in baseball. And I think that's one of the things, and this is my minus here, in that the Pirates desperately need some power. And Ke'Bryan Hayes, while could still be a very good Major League Baseball player, is going to play a position at a corner infield spot that is one of the, what we generally think of as the 4 power positions. Maybe now there's 5 with the DH, corner infield, corner outfield. Those are the guys that you have hit the ball over the fence. Even if he's a very good starter in the rest of his career, he does not appear like he's going to be a guy that, is regularly in that 20 to 30 home run range. Where is it going to come from? And I think that is one of the biggest problems with this team. You look at tonight's game in sort of a microcosm, 5 strikeouts. That's not that bad. You'll take 5 strikeouts any night. 4 hits. They put the ball in play. Putting the ball in play with the state of defense in the major leagues, the way it is, how much data these teams have on these hitters, in play is tough. You've really got to rip it if you're putting it in play. The way the teams that are at the top of Major League Baseball are scoring their runs is hitting it over the defense, over the fence. They can't shift you there. Ted Williams 50 years ago still applies, right? And I think with the advancements in defense, that has become even more important. And so I think the counting stats are hard to put into perspective, given, a weird year, obviously, but next to last in the majors in home runs, and, there doesn't seem to be any pop there. And so next to last in slugging and dead last in ISO power, that's not going to get it done. And I don't see a single prospect in their system that figures to change that in a big way. There's some nice players in there. I don't have a single 30 home run guy. I don't even know if there's a 20 home run guy there. There's just no power anywhere. And it is the premier commodity in baseball at this moment, from a free agent standpoint and from a trade standpoint. Today is to me a big example of that. They cut down on their strikeouts, which have been a boogaboo for a number of guys this year, and they just hit into outs anyway. They've got to find some home runs somewhere.
To your point, I think it's going to take someone like a Ke'Bryan Hayes, because it's harder to teach bat speed than it is to teach how to put the ball in the air. We've seen countless guys over the years do it, where they have been able to add lift. But that fast twitch stuff, I think that's something that's more built in, and that's something that's more of an individual skill as opposed to a learned skill that you can maybe pick up later in your career. So that's what encourages me about Hayes. At the same time, you're right. Power equals production these days. With the trends in baseball, with pitchers getting more swing and miss than ever before, I think people tend to look down on the hitters, but maybe they don't give the pitchers enough credit too. It's an arms race, right? Literally in this case. And pitchers' stuff has never been better. So when you put the ball in play, you better put the ball in play with some authority. And yeah, there were some tough luck outs. You mentioned the Josh Bell line out to center with the bases loaded in the 8th. So that happens in baseball from time to time. But even the data over 40 games shows the Pirates are one of the most powerless teams in the majors, and that's no way to get it done. Okay, one last down for me, and this is purely stylistic. I wish the Pirates would have figured out a way to keep those mustard gold throwbacks around for today. That was always a perfect fit for Clemente Day when they did have those available. I'm not sure if Scott Bonnet, the equipment manager, and his staff, Bones and the boys, have thrown those out or auctioned them off or what, because they're no longer in the rotation, obviously. They haven't been in a few years, but would love to have seen those early Three River Stadium threads, the mustard gold and black, and the Sansa slacks out there for Clemente Day. Okay, thank you so much for watching Pittsburgh Postgame. We do have a comment here. TJ Janosko says they looked horrible tonight. Yeah, no doubt about that. No bats, although Hayes is impressive. And yeah, when you see him field a ball in the hole too, that's a lot of fun as well. If you appreciate defense, as we talked about with relation to the great one back at the top of the show. We do have the live commentary box available there on YouTube, but you can also tweet us. You can also get at us on Facebook at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Alan, I mentioned the cornucopia. It is the fall season. The cornucopia coming up for viewers and subscribers this weekend. What are you going to be involved in terms of coverage and some of our video presentations here on the channel?
So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of peeking my head out of I'm football up to here at the moment, and then just this much of me is worried about baseball right now. I'm nearly fully in to football mode as we get the season started. Really, tomorrow at the NFL level, we'll be covering at Pittsburgh Sports Now. The Whitfield football season starts on Friday, and then we'll have Pitt and West Virginia for PSN and West Virginia Sports Now on Saturday. And so on my Friday football show, we'll be coming back with a slightly different format, and we're going to do some live stuff during the day on Friday. So just like minimize your work Zoom and bring up YouTube on Friday. And I'll be talking with Mike Vikovcan and a couple other folks about the football weekend every Friday from now until, I don't know, Christmas and maybe beyond if the Steelers have a good season. And then we'll be having triple barrel Pittsburgh postgame on Saturday as Mike Asti will have postgame after West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky. That's a noon kick. I'm not sure of the plans, but somehow we will have postgame after Pitt versus Austin P at Heinz Field at 4 p.m. I'll be there in person covering the game. I have to put on pants for the 5th time since March. So that's a big, exciting milestone in my life. And then I guess I don't have to, but I will for the to increase the enjoyment of the others in the press box at the very least. And then you'll have the Hounds to as the nightcap on Saturday night, as they've got, I believe, 7:00 kickoff for Pittsburgh's only winning professional team.
Yes, taking on Hartford, the main challenger in their group in this reformed USL championship for the COVID season. So 2 matchups left against the primary challenger there. Getting first place gets them at least one home playoff match, if not more. So very critical stuff there for the Hounds, who've won 3 in a row. And John Krasinski of Pittsburgh Soccer Now will be with me on site at Highmark Stadium. They finished with 3 out of 4 at home, so the schedule is turning in their favor. And no more midweek games as well, all Saturdays from here on out. So they'll be rested. They'll be ready to go against Hartford, which also, pleasingly for you hockey fans out there, wears green and blue. You'll be happy to know, just like the Whalers. And the Hartford Athletic, the name of the team, plays Brass Bonanza after every home goal. So they've really embraced that.
Well, you're trying to make me like them, and the Hounds have 2 left against them, and they're the biggest competition for first place. So now I'm torn. I don't know what to think of these upstart nutmeggers, as those from Connecticut are known. Although I doubt they have that many Connecticut natives on the team, and in fact, don't the Riverhounds have one? Yeah.
Danny Griffin scored against Hartford up there. Nutmeg, though, does have a soccer connotation. If you don't follow, you put the ball through your opponent's legs. That's a nutmeg.
That they should be, a lot of soccer teams that have that sort of formal name, like the Hartford Athletic, they end up with a nickname that kind of goes along with it. They should be the Nutmeggers, right? I mean, it's right there. That's the Nutmeg State, the Nutmeg soccer connotation, which is when you put the ball between the defender's legs, and you can figure out why on your own. But why aren't they? That's fantastic. We need to get the USL memes account on this on Twitter. They're fabulous for things of this nature.
It's a fun league to follow. I'll say that much. I feel like I wish that some of our major leagues had more of that organic feel in terms of social media and all of that. Of course, USL memes not affiliated with the league, but you know what I mean. It's pleasantly weird in a lot of ways, and in some cases, it can be frustrating for members of the Steel Army when it comes to officiating, I think, especially. But hey, it's been a lot of fun to be part of that franchise's trajectory in a small way here in the last few years. And I hope that folks can continue to jump on that bandwagon, because there's plenty of room left on it. And there could be a couple of months left on what may be a championship type of run. It's definitely a very good team and a squad that's got great coaching, good young players, and a couple of veterans sprinkled in. So, yeah, that'll cap our triple header in Pittsburgh sports live land. That'll be our third and final Pittsburgh postgame of the night on Saturday. And then what we have Steelers coming up on Monday. I'll be joining Mike Ostie after that one. So, yeah, footy in a few ways in the near future.
Yeah, and I'll be in the Meadowlands for that one on the road for the first time since March. Since I was at the ACC basketball tournament. So we're not quite sure of what the NFL postgame schedule is going to be like, but if I can join you and Mike from MetLife Stadium, I will. I also have a hotel room across the street, so maybe we'll do that instead. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, I'll be 7:15 kickoff, weird Monday Night Football kickoff time on the opening week because they play the doubleheader. So don't wait until 20 after 8 or you'll miss the first quarter of what I think should be a very interesting Steelers-Giants game. I was on the conference call with Joe Judge today in my first experience with him, and wow, what a guy. I understand the New York media has been very complimentary of him, and I can totally see it. Just a very fun to root for, down-to-earth guy, and really someone that I didn't know very much about. I was really doing some research on him, and very interesting and unique guy, and he told an interesting anecdote about answering the phones as a GA and Mike Tomlin calling when I believe he was at Mississippi State or something like that. And just he would find a reason to be there and stay on the phone so that he could pick Mike Tomlin's brain about things. Interesting, I think, in Pittsburgh, I think we think of Mike Tomlin as a young and obviously is still a very connected to the youth and the players kind of thing. But here he is mentoring a guy a long time ago who's going to be an NFL head coach here against him. A bit of a juxtaposition from what we're usually used to thinking of the Steelers head coach as, but I'm excited about all levels of our football season. I think Pitt and the Steelers both have a chance to have a pretty solid year if we can get it in, and things look moderately positive on that front as well. So good signs, good feelings all around with the upcoming football season, and I'm excited to be covering it here and across our network.
I'm just fired up about the punter. We have another Colquitt in Pittsburgh, some championship tradition there after the signing this week. Well, we'll have more baseball as well as the Pirates round out the 2020 season. Friday at Kansas City, Stephen Brault gets the start there in the interleague matchup against the Royals, and they'll play through the weekend. So keep an eye on our social media accounts for schedules there and when we'll be on the air. I'll be on the air for another baseball Pittsburgh postgame before the end of the weekend. I know that much. For Alan Saunders and for all of you, thank you so much for watching. This has been Pittsburgh postgame, Pirates edition. Pirates lose 8-1 on Roberto Clemente Day, but well, we definitely had a good time reminiscing and actually talking about what we've experienced as far as his reflected legacy here in Pittsburgh. And like we said, hopefully nationwide. We'll talk to you next time on Pittsburgh Sports Live.